March 28, 1945. A field east of the Rhine, near the shattered German town of Oberkassel. The air smells of wet clay and diesel fumes. A relentless, bone-chilling drizzle falls from a sky the color of lead, turning the landscape into a morass of mud that clings to everything, to the treads of the GMC trucks, the boots of the G.I.S, and the shuffling, broken footwear of the captured. For Captain Daniel Sterling of the U.S. Army Medical Corps, the scene has become a grimly familiar tableau. He stands under the dripping canvas awning of the 12th Evacuation Hospital's triage tent, a tin mug of lukewarm coffee in his hand, watching the end of a war unfold one defeated man at a time. They come in a long, shambling line, a river of field gray and charcoal black, guarded by a handful of weary soldiers from the 78th Infantry Division. These are not the proud, disciplined soldiers from the newsreels of 1940. These are the dregs of the Third Reich. Old men with haunted eyes, their faces slack with a generation's worth of weariness, pulled from their homes to serve in the Volkssturm, the People's Storm. And boys, shockingly young, some no older than 15, swimming in uniforms cut for men, their boyish faces a tragic mask of false bravado and utter terror. They carry no weapons now, only the invisible weight of their nation's collapse. Their hands are empty, clasped behind their heads or limp at their sides. The sounds are muted by the rain. The sucking squelch of boots in the mud, the low murmur of orders from the American guards, the occasional, hacking cough from the line of prisoners. You can feel the exhaustion radiating from them, a palpable wave of resignation. For these men, the war is over. Survival is the only objective left. Sterling takes a sip of his coffee. It's bitter, boiled too long, but it's hot. He's been on his feet for 36 hours, stitching, setting, and saving what he can of the American boys wounded in the final, vicious push into Germany's heartland. He sees the prisoners not with hatred, or even anger, but with a profound, surgical weariness. They are just another part of the immense human wreckage he has to process. His eyes scan the line, a doctor's habit, looking for immediate medical needs. Limps, obvious bandages, faces pale with blood loss. Most are walking wounded, lucky to have injuries minor enough to march. But then he sees her. An anomaly. A woman. She is perhaps in her early 20s, wearing the dark blue uniform of a Luftwaffe Helferin, a female auxiliary. Her blonde hair is matted with rain and grime, plastered to her forehead. She is not marching so much as being carried along by the momentum of the crowd, her steps faltering, her body swaying. One of the guards, a young private with an M1 Garand slung over his shoulder, prods her gently with the barrel of his rifle. Not out of malice, but impatience. Komm schon, Fräulein. Keep moving. The woman stumbles, catching herself on the shoulder of the old man in front of her. She straightens up, her face a mask of determined composure, but Sterling sees the flicker of agony in her eyes. It's a look he knows well. It's the look of someone trying to hide a wound, trying to pretend they are stronger than they are. He's seen it 100 times on the faces of American GIs. He watches her take another 10 steps, each one visibly costing her. Her left hand is pressed tightly against her lower abdomen, hidden by the fold of her tunic. Her face is unnaturally pale, almost translucent in the flat gray light. She isn't just tired. She isn't just hungry. Something is wrong. Sterling sets his mug down on a crate of medical supplies. He catches the eye of the sergeant overseeing the procession. He jerks his chin towards the woman. "Sergeant, that one. Pull her out of the line. Bring her over here." The sergeant looks, his expression a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. A female prisoner was unusual enough. A sick one was just another problem in a day full of them. "You got it, Captain." He barks an order, and 2 guards step forward, their movements efficient and impersonal. They break into the line, their presence parting the sea of gray uniforms. They reach the woman, their hands on her arms. For a moment, she resists, a flash of fear and pride in her eyes. Then, her strength gives out entirely. Her legs buckle, and the guards are no longer escorting her, but holding her up, their boots sinking into the mud as they half carry, half drag her towards the canvas cathedral of the aid station. The interior of the triage tent is a world of controlled chaos, insulated from the rain but not from the war. The air is thick with the smells of carbolic acid, ether, blood, and damp wool. Under the stark, yellow light of a handful of portable generators, medical corpsmen move with a practiced, hurried rhythm. The sounds are a symphony of suffering, the low moans of the wounded on their cots, the metallic clatter of surgical instruments on steel trays, the clipped, low-toned orders of the surgeons. Captain Daniel Sterling moves through this world with the detached focus of a man who has learned to build walls around his own emotions. The two guards bring the German woman inside, their muddy boots leaving trails on the wooden floorboards. They deposit her onto a vacant folding chair near the entrance, a piece of enemy territory in this American sanctuary of healing. One guard remains by the tent flap, his rifle held at a loose port arms, his presence a stark reminder of her status. She is a prisoner first, a patient second. The woman slumps in the chair, her head bowed, her wet hair hiding her face. She keeps her hand pressed to her side, a silent, desperate gesture. Sterling is finishing with a young GI from Ohio, a private named Hansen with a clean through-and-through bullet wound in his shoulder. "You're lucky, son," Sterling says, his voice calm and reassuring as he tightens the bandage. "It missed the bone. You'll be back stateside chasing girls before you know it." The boy manages a weak, grateful smile. Sterling pats his uninjured shoulder and nods to a corpsman. "Get him prepped for transport. Morphine, a quarter grain." He turns his attention to the German woman. He pulls a wooden stool over and sits opposite her, creating a small island of quiet in the bustling tent. "I'm Captain Sterling. I'm a doctor," he says slowly, first in English, then repeating the word Arzt in his functional, textbook German. He gestures to himself. "Doctor. Verstehen Sie?" She gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod, not looking at him. Her breathing is shallow, too quick. Her skin has a waxy, clammy sheen to it. All the warning signs are there. Shock. Internal distress. "What's your name?" he asks. No response. He gestures to a young corpsman nearby, PFC Miller, who has a notepad. "Miller, see if you can get her details. Name, rank, unit." Standard procedure. Miller, a boy of 19 from Nebraska with a perpetually serious expression, kneels beside her. "Fräulein? Your name?" he asks, his accent thicker than Sterling's. The woman remains silent, her focus turned entirely inward, consumed by the battle raging within her own body. Sterling sighs. This isn't getting them anywhere. He needs to assess her condition, with or without her cooperation. "All right, let's get her onto a cot," Sterling says. Gently. He and Miller help her to her feet. As she rises, a low gasp of pain escapes her lips, a sound so sharp and wounded it cuts through the general din of the tent. Heads turn. For a moment, the rhythm of the aid station falters. They lay her down on an empty cot, the canvas groaning under her slight weight. Sterling pulls on a pair of rubber gloves. "I need to examine you," he says, again in both languages. "Ich muss Sie untersuchen." He speaks softly, professionally, trying to bridge the chasm of language and uniform that separates them. He starts with the basics. He checks her pulse at her wrist. It's rapid and thready, a bird fluttering weakly in a cage. Her skin is cold to the touch, despite the humid warmth of the tent. He gently pulls back her eyelids. Her pupils are dilated. All signs point to significant internal bleeding. But from what? There are no visible wounds, No tears in her uniform, no dark stains of blood. He moves to her abdomen, the area she has been guarding so fiercely. This is going to be uncomfortable, he warns. He lays his hand flat on her tunic, just to feel the tension. Her stomach muscles are rigid, board-like. It's a classic sign of peritonitis, of the body trying to wall off a catastrophe. He needs to know more. Wo tut es we? He asks. Where does it hurt? She finally looks at him, her blue eyes wide with a mixture of terror and pleading. She doesn't speak, but her gaze travels down to her lower left side. Sterling understands. He places his hand on the spot, over the thick wool of her uniform, and applies the slightest, most delicate pressure. The reaction is instantaneous and violent. A sharp, piercing cry tears from her throat, and her body arches off the cot in a spasm of pure, unadulterated agony. The sound is raw, primal, and it stops Sterling cold. It's a sound that tells him this is no ordinary injury. This is something else entirely. The woman's cry hangs in the air, a sharp note of discord in the tense grim melody. PFC Miller flinches. The guard at the entrance takes a step forward, his hand tightening on his M1 Garand, before realizing the threat is not external. Captain Sterling withdraws his hand as if burned, his face a mask of clinical concentration, but a new urgency now drives his movements. He has touched the epicenter of her pain, and its intensity is a dire warning. Miller, get me a privacy screen. Now, he orders, his voice low and sharp. And tell Sergeant Harris I don't want anyone near this cot. Miller moves quickly, grabbing a spare canvas sheet and helping Sterling rig it up on 2 4-poles, creating a crude, 3-walled examination room. The flimsy barrier does little to block the sounds of the aid station, but it carves out a space of intense focus. It separates the single, desperate case from the larger machinery of the war. Sterling turns to the guard. Wait outside the flap. I'll call you if I need you. The soldier hesitates, his orders to never leave a prisoner unattended conflicting with the captain's authority. Sterling meets his gaze. She's not going anywhere, son. Now go. The guard nods and retreats, leaving them in their makeshift sanctuary. Inside the screened-off area, the world shrinks to the size of the cot. It's just Sterling, Miller, and the German woman, who is now curled on her side, her knees drawn up to her chest, her breathing coming in ragged, painful gasps. The spasm has passed, but the agony remains. Sterling knows he can't get a proper diagnosis through her thick, wet uniform. We have to cut this off her, he says to Miller. Get the trauma shears. With a few efficient snips, Miller cuts through the tunic and blouse, exposing her torso. Her skin is ghostly white, slick with a cold sweat. There are no bruises, no shrapnel wounds, nothing to explain the source of the catastrophe unfolding inside her. Sterling begins his examination again, this time with his bare, gloved hands on her skin. He palpates her abdomen gently, methodically, his fingers trained to read the subtle language of the human body. He works from the outside in, mapping the terrain of her pain. When he gets close to the lower left quadrant, he sees her entire body tense, her teeth clenching. He needs her to talk to him. What is your name? He asks again, his tone softer now, less like an officer and more like a doctor. He uses the formal Germanier name, and then, trying a different approach, the informal Dine name, hoping one might break through her wall of silence. She shakes her head, a tear tracing a clean path through the grime on her cheek. Bid, she whispers, the German word for please. It's a plea for him to stop, but also a plea for help. It's all right, Sterling says in English, the language of his own compassion. I'm going to help you. You have to tell me what happened. He looks at Miller. Get a line in her. Saline drip. Wide open. We need to get her pressure up. As Miller expertly preps her arm for N4, Sterling leans in closer to the woman. Her eyes are unfocused, drifting. She is going into shock. He needs information, and he needs it now. Were you in a blast? Did something fall on you? Were you hit? He asks, trying every possibility. She just shakes her head, a slow, weak movement. Her lips move, trying to form words, but only a faint whisper emerges. Sterling leans his ear closer to her mouth, the smell of fear and sickness filling his senses. He strains to hear her over the hum of the generator and a distant rumble he prays is thunder and not artillery. And then he hears it. 4 words, spoken in heavily accented, broken English, a phrase learned by rote from a long-forgotten school lesson. The words are faint, fragile, but they land in Sterling's mind with the force of a grenade. Something is about to burst. The phrase is so strange, so unclinical, it throws him for a second. An appendix? They don't usually burst with this kind of localized, acute agony on the left side. A ruptured spleen? Possible, but usually caused by blunt force trauma she shows no sign of. A perforated ulcer? Again, the location is wrong, the symptoms not quite right. He looks down at her again, at her pale, sweat-sheen skin, at the taut landscape of her abdomen, and at the sheer, feminine terror in her eyes. And suddenly, an idea, a terrible, medically sound and contextually horrifying idea slams into his consciousness. An idea so far outside the realm of a combat surgeon's daily reality that he had completely dismissed it. He's been looking for a wound of war. But this isn't a wound of war. Not in the way he understands it. He freezes, his hands hovering over her body. His mind races, connecting the dots, the gender of the patient, the specific location of the pain, the rapid onset of shock, the profound internal bleeding with no external cause, and her own desperate, layman's description. Something is about to burst. His eyes widen. The clinical detachment shatters, replaced by a jolt of pure, unadulterated shock. He knows. He knows what's happening. The realization strikes Captain Daniel Sterling with the force of a physical impact. He stands completely still for a heartbeat, the sounds of the triage tent fading into a dull roar in his ears. It's not shrapnel. It's not a bullet. It's not any of the 1,000 battlefield traumas he is trained to treat. It is a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. A fertilized egg, growing in the fallopian tube instead of the uterus, has grown until it has torn the tube apart. Inside her, right now, a major artery is likely severed, pumping her life's blood into her abdominal cavity. The bursting she described wasn't a metaphor. It was a literal, biological event. Everything clicks into place with horrifying clarity. The lack of an external wound. The precise, agonizing pain in the lower quadrant. The rapid descent into hypovolemic shock. He is no longer just a captain in the U.S. Army. He is a doctor facing a catastrophic medical emergency that respects no uniform, no flag, no battle line. And he is losing. Every second he stands here, she is bleeding out internally. Miller. Sterling's voice is a whip crack, cutting through the tense noise and startling the young corpsman, who is just securing the 4-line in the woman's arm. Forget the saline. Get me blood. Typo. 2 units. Stat. And a full laparotomy kit. Now. Move. The sudden change from quiet examination to frantic command sends a jolt through Miller. His eyes are wide with confusion. Captain? A laparotomy? Here. The procedure slicing open the entire abdomen was something reserved for the sterile, well-equipped surgical tents, not a muddy triage station. There's no time to move her, Miller. We do it here. Sterling is already tearing open a pack of sterile gloves, his movements fast and precise. He rips a sterile drape from a pack and throws it over the woman's torso. He is improvising an operating theater on a canvas cot. The woman, whose name he still doesn't know, lets out a low moan, her consciousness fading. Her life is now measured in minutes, perhaps seconds. "Tell me you know how to assist in a major abdominal surgery, Miller," Sterling says, not as a question, but as a command. "Yes, sir." In training, Miller stammers, his hands already flying as he retrieves the requested surgical tray and hangs the bags of precious type O blood. The commotion attracts the attention of the guard, who pokes his head through the canvas screen, his face a picture of alarm. "Captain? Everything all right?" "Everything is not all right," Sterling snaps, not looking up from his patient. He grabs a betadine swab and begins frantically cleaning a wide swath of the woman's abdomen. "She's dying. I need you to stand post right outside the screen and you don't let anyone in. Anyone. You understand me, Private?" The soldier, barely out of his teens, is taken aback by the ferocity in the doctor's voice. He sees the blood bags, the gleaming instruments on the tray, the pale, almost lifeless form of the German woman. He nods, his expression hardening with a new sense of purpose. "Yes, sir." No one gets in. He disappears behind the screen, a sentinel now guarding not a prisoner, but a patient. Sterling turns back to the woman. Her pulse is almost gone at her wrist. Her blood pressure must be plummeting. Miller is working beside him, a blur of efficient motion, anticipating his needs, laying out scalpels, clamps, and sutures. The boy's fear has been replaced by the focused adrenaline of his training. For these few minutes, in this small, cordoned-off space, their ranks and nationalities have become irrelevant. They are a surgical team. She is their patient. Death is the enemy. Sterling takes a deep breath, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic. He holds a number 10 scalpel in his gloved hand, its steel blade catching the yellow light from the generator-powered bulb hanging overhead. He looks at the woman's face, now peaceful, almost serene, as she slips deeper into unconsciousness. He has to cut into an enemy soldier, without proper anesthesia, without a proper operating room, without any certainty of the outcome, based on a desperate diagnosis made in a matter of seconds. It is a violation of every rule, a gamble with impossibly high stakes. But not to act is to condemn her to death. He positions the scalpel over the pale, taut skin of her abdomen. Below his hand, a silent, deadly hemorrhage is stealing her life. Seconds suddenly matter more than anything else in the world. The scalpel descends. Captain Sterling makes a long, steady incision down the midline of the woman's abdomen, from just below the navel to the pubic bone. There is no time for anesthetic, only the deep unconsciousness of shock to dull her senses. A thin line of red appears, then widens as he cuts deeper through layers of fascia and muscle. The moment the blade breaches the peritoneal cavity, the truth of his diagnosis is confirmed in a horrifying rush. Dark, non-clotting blood wells up from the incision, spilling over the sterile drapes and onto the canvas cot. She's filled with it? Suction, Miller. Get the suction in here now. Sterling barks. Miller, his face pale but his hands steady, guides the metal tip of the portable suction aspirator into the wound. The machine comes to life with a hungry gurgle, pulling away the pooling blood so Sterling can see. It's like trying to repair a leaky pipe at the bottom of a muddy lake. The air is suddenly thick with the coppery smell of fresh blood. Outside the flimsy screen, the sounds of war continue: the rumble of a truck engine, the distant, crumping echo of artillery, the shouts of men. But inside, there is only the frantic, focused silence of the surgery, punctuated by the gurgle of the suction and the quiet clink of metal instruments. Sterling's hands move with a speed and certainty born of hundreds of hours spent repairing the torn bodies of soldiers. He uses retractors to pull the incision open, exposing the abdominal organs swimming in a sea of red. "More light," he commands, and Miller adjusts the portable lamp, casting the gruesome tableau in stark relief. Sterling's eyes scan the organs, searching for the source. And then he sees it. The left fallopian tube is a mangled, ruptured mess, the site of the ectopic pregnancy. A torn artery at its base is pumping blood with every weak beat of the woman's heart. That is the enemy. There it is, Sterling breathes. He knee clamps. Now. Miller slaps two curved clamps into his waiting palm. With deft, precise movements, Sterling reaches deep into the abdominal cavity, his glove slick with blood. He isolates the ruptured tube. One clamp goes across the uterine artery, the other across the ovarian ligament. He tightens them. The pulsing hemorrhage slows, then sputters, then stops. The bleeding is controlled. A wave of profound relief washes over Sterling, so potent it almost makes him dizzy. They have a chance. For the next 20 minutes, he works methodically, removing the damaged tube, ligating the bleeding vessels with suture, and cleaning out the abdominal cavity. Miller assists perfectly, suctioning, swabbing, providing instruments, his youthful concentration absolute. The first bag of type O blood is empty, the second one half gone, its life-giving fluid dripping steadily into the woman's vein. Color is slowly returning to her skin, a faint pink blush chasing away the waxy, death-like pallor. Her pulse, which Miller is monitoring at her neck, is growing stronger, more regular. Finally, Sterling is ready to close. He begins stitching the layers of muscle and fascia back together, his movements sure and rhythmic. The crisis is over. The frantic battle has become a careful act of reconstruction. The guard peeks in again, his eyes wide at the bloody scene, but he says nothing, simply retreating to his post. The unspoken truce holds. In this tent, on this day, the Hippocratic Oath has superseded the Articles of War. When the last stitch is in place and a clean bandage covers the long incision, Sterling finally straightens up, his back screaming in protest. He is covered in sweat and the German woman's blood. He pulls off his gloves and tosses them onto the tray. "Get her vitals every 15 minutes, Miller," he says, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "Keep the blood going. We'll move her to the post-op ward when she's stable." He looks down at the woman's face. In the placid state of recovery, her youth is even more apparent. She is just a girl, caught on the wrong side of a terrible history. He still doesn't know her name. Sterling pushes through the canvas screen and steps back into the main part of the tent. The familiar chaos seems distant now, muted. He walks to the tent flap and looks out. The rain has stopped. A pale, watery sunlight is breaking through the leaden clouds, glinting off the puddles in the mud. The long column of prisoners is gone, marched off to a holding pen. The war is still here. Nothing has changed. And yet, for him, everything has. He fought a different kind of battle in the last hour. He didn't save a soldier or defeat an enemy. He saved a patient. A human being. He looks at his hands, still stained with her blood, and for the first time in a long time, he is not entirely sure what that means.